Discover the incredible moment. A girl's touching plea. Saved one. U.S. Marine and his faithful K-9. Sarah felt the familiar clench of anxiety deep within her gut as she locked the door to their modest home in Kentucky. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden light over the dusty streets, but warmth was the last thing on her mind. She was expected at the grooming shop soon, where the demands of barking dogs and impatient owners waited. It was a job she loved, a stepping stone towards her goal of becoming a veterinarian, yet the nagging worry of Lily's needs pulled at her heart with equal fervor. Each day was a balanced act, juggling work and motherhood while clinging to her aspirations. The pressure begged for release. Lily needed her mother, a nurturing hand to smooth over the rough edges of childhood. But those dreams felt like fading photographs, memories of possibilities pushed aside by bills and responsibilities. She hesitated whenever she considered reaching out for help. Sharing her struggles felt like admitting defeat. In her heart danced a storm of emotions. Guilt swirled with determination. Fear intertwined with hope. Was she enough for Lily? Could she whip up some magic in their lives, while being utterly exhausted from the demands of the day? As she drove through the sleepy town, Lily's laughter echoed in her mind, a reminder of bright moments shattered by her own worries. They often faced downs and own lack of resources, and while she wanted to protect her daughter from those truths, she feared the cracks in her own perseverance might create larger rifts in their fragile world. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each evening, when Lily volunteered at the shelter, Sarah experienced an aching emptiness nagging at her heart, knowing those hours could be spent together. Yet she also admired Lily's passionate spirit, a spark igniting her dreams of a future where animals thrived and lives transformed. As a single mother, she wanted nothing but the best for her, even if those moments apart left her vulnerable, face to face with her self-doubt. Then she overheard it. The soft murmur of conversation between Max, the quiet Marine, and the shelter director, his words slicing through the air like ice. "I just can't afford to keep her." The desperate tone clung to Sarah's thoughts, an unsettling refrain. Max's struggle resonated with her own, a stark reminder of what was at stake, the emotional toll of financial hardship, the weight of isolation. Watching Lily's open-hearted kindness while isolated within her own uneasiness deepened Sarah's internal conflict. How could she support this connection budding between them, yet despaired that she could do nothing to help either? With every smile exchanged, every moment Lily spent at that shelter, Sarah's insecurities erupted, urging her to confront her own demons. Would the kindness of a child be enough to heal the wounds of a veteran? Would it bring her daughter an ounce of brightness in this stressful reality? Caught in an emotional tempest, Sarah felt the ground beneath her shift. A powerful storm sure to rise, but would it tear them apart, or weave a shared tapestry of healing? As fresh feelings of dread and possibility spooled together tightly, the air hummed with an impending reckoning, leaving Sarah standing on a precipice, the question looming: could they find rescue amid chaos, or would the shadow of uncertainty trap them into isolation? As Sarah stepped into the grooming shop, the cacophony of dogs barking blended into the rhythm of her heartbeat. Each woof carried an urgency that matched the tumult in her mind. The bright fluorescent lights flickered above as she arranged her grooming supplies, a montage of shavers, brushes, and shampoos. Yet her thoughts lingered on the shelter, on Lily, and on the tension that thickened the air whenever Max's name crossed her mind. Her hands moved automatically, but her mind was a storm of worries and possibilities. Could she really juggle her daughter's emotional investment in Max with the harsh realities of their life? Each morning felt like a tightrope walk, balancing the demands of her job and the affection she poured into Lily's upbringing. The constant pull of obligation versus aspiration left her feeling stranded, wondering if any of it was sustainable. Days turned into weeks, each moment at the grooming shop barely denting the financial fog that enveloped her. She often found herself trapped in her own thoughts, the worry of making ends meet amplifying every small setback. But there was a flicker of hope surfacing. Maybe this message from the universe was a call to action. Perhaps she could transform her anxiety into something constructive. After a long day of zooming back and forth between customers, she made a decision. It was time to confront her fears and seize the reins of her life. Shifting her focus from merely surviving to actively mapping her future ignited a flame within her. She reached for her phone, scrolling through potential online veterinary programs. Each click revealed new opportunities, fueling her desire to return to her dreams that felt so far out of reach. That evening, as she tucked Lily into bed, the little girl's soft snores filled the room with an unexpected sense of peace. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed and contemplated Lily's ability to provide kindness to Max. Maybe I can reach out to him, she thought, considering the fragility of his situation. There might be a way for her to help, to support both him and Lily. Driven by a newfound resolve, she crafted a message, pouring her heart into the words. She spoke of wanting to offer help, suggesting practical ways to support Max while initiating genuine conversations about their shared burdens. With each tap of her fingers against the screen, she released a piece of her anxiety, transforming it into something hopeful. The next morning, the weight of uncertainty loomed again, when the familiar pang of anxiety crept back in. What if he rejected her offer? What if the conversation led to territory she wasn't ready to traverse? But burying her head in the sand was no longer an option. She had to embrace the potential for growth, for meaning in her life beyond the simple routine she was trapped in. Each moment spent with her daughter became an opportunity to reflect on her fears, to transmute her vulnerabilities into strengths that could carry her forward into the arms of the future she dreamed of. It was time to shed the self-doubt and lean into the courage that she knew lay beneath. The uncertainty coiled like a snake, but beneath it pulsed determination. She felt ready to face whatever followed. However, that readiness drifted into uncertainty when her phone buzzed with a message notification from Max. Her heart raced as she considered what could unfold next. Had her instinct to reach out inspired him, or pushed him further away? As she stared at the screen, her breath caught in her throat. The moment of truth arrived. Would she dive in or pull back? With her heart drumming in her chest, Sarah's finger hovered over the screen. The message from Max loomed large, a beacon of potential or disaster. Should she open it now, diving headfirst into the unknown, or take a moment to collect herself? The weight of the decision pressed hard against her chest, as if the choice itself could alter the course of their lives. Inhaling deeply, she swiped her finger across the message. The words unfolded before her like a fragile tapestry, revealing Max's heartfelt response. He expressed gratitude for her offer, admitting his struggles without reservation. Each line filled her with a complex knot of relief and trepidation. This was her chance to connect with him as a person, a fellow soul burdened by unseen weight. But as she read deeper, confusion danced between the lines. He spoke of wanting to change, of the fear that gripped him each day, paralyzing his ambition and draining his spirit. Inspiration flickered inside Sarah, igniting the notion that she could be more than a mere caregiver. Perhaps she could be a catalyst for change in both their lives. Sitting on her bed, the air thick with the incense of freshly washed linen, Sarah reflected on her own transformation. The courage she had mustered echoed in Max's words. Her instinct to reach out had not only resonated with her struggles, but now served as a mirror to his. She felt that tug of responsibility, not just to Lily, but to Max too, to help him reclaim his path. As the exhausting day faded into dusk, she began mapping a plan. There was clarity in the swirling doubts. Perhaps they could support each other. What if they combined their strengths, collaborated on pushing each other toward their respective goals? The idea fanned the flames of a partnership where hard-won skills and dreams could be exchanged like treasures. That night, her mind buzzed with ideas. Opening a dialogue about his struggles would require delicate navigation. What questions could she ask to draw him out? How could she share her own vulnerability without overwhelming him? Her thoughts danced in circles, constructing a web of support, tying their fates closer. The next day at the grooming shop, Sarah worked with renewed fervor, each snip of the scissors echoing her determination. With the clippers buzzing in the background, she began drafting a new message to Max, weaving in her thoughts about partnering in their transformations. The notion of shared victories ignited something deep inside her, an ember of ambition that had long ago flickered out. But intertwining destinies meant she had to be honest about her realities too. Could she risk opening herself up again? Hadn't being vulnerable put her in this precarious situation in the first place? But this was different. This was about mutual support. Each of them held pieces of the puzzle that could help the other find clarity. Fumbling with the words, Sarah began typing. The message took shape under her fingertips, and she felt more alive with every phrase. For once, she wasn't simply seeking to reassure someone. She was laying out a mutual path forward, one that could steer both their lives away from the brink. Her heart skipped a beat as she hit send. There was no turning back now. But alongside the thrill was the creeping fear that the response could change everything. Would he embrace the partnership, or would he draw back overwhelmed by both their burdens? Sarah was left in limbo as she stared at the screen, anxiety tightening around her like a vice. Each breath felt precarious, an anticipation that snaked through her veins. She had taken the leap. Now, all that remained was to see if Max would catch her fall. Suddenly, the shop door swung open, and the jingling of a collar echoed as a new customer walked in. Lost in her thoughts, Sarah barely acknowledged the commotion, her focus consuming what lay ahead. But there it was, an omen of change, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was about to unfold in her life. The kind of transformation that could alter more than just their individual paths. What awaited her next, she couldn't yet know. But as she glanced up, her gaze locked on the new visitor. She felt the unmistakable rush of uncertainty that came before all great changes. Would this be a fortuitous twist in the narrative, or just another distraction? As Sarah's gaze shifted toward the newcomer, a tall man in a faded military jacket stepped inside, accompanied by a lively German shepherd that seemed to radiate enthusiasm. The dog trotted forward, tail wagging like a metronome, as if sensing the warmth and comfort of the grooming shop. But Sarah, momentarily jolted from her thoughts, felt an unusual pang of recognition in the man's demeanor, a quiet intensity mixed with longing, like a reflection of her own struggles. "Hey there," the man said, his voice warm yet burdened. "Just looking for a little grooming for this one." He gestured toward the dog, whose eager eyes darted around the room, soaking up the attention. "Sure. I'd love to help," Sarah replied, her professional instincts kicking in even as her mind swirled with anxious anticipation of Max's response. As she clipped the dog's fur, she couldn't shake the man's piercing gaze that followed her every movement. It was as if he was a book she could read, one filled with chapters of lost battles and unspoken dreams. "Is he a rescue?" she probed, anchoring herself in the present to escape her spiraling thoughts about Max. "More like I'm a rescue," he chuckled softly, the shadows of his experiences flickering across his face. "This is rough. He saved me, really." There it was, a moment of vulnerability that sparked something deep within Sarah. She felt the tug of a kindred spirit, a recognition of shared burdens, even if their paths diverged. "Sometimes it takes a little help to find your way," she said cautiously, contemplating the echoes of her own journey alongside Max. "Yes, I guess," he replied, eyes drifting. "After coming back from overseas, everything feels different. I thought I'd be ready, but it's hard to admit that I wasn't. I couldn't do it alone. Rough here, he was the one thing that kept me going." Her heart resonated with his words. She was navigating her own fears and uncertainties with Max, hoping they could be each other's refuge amid their chaos. This small interaction felt rich with potential for deeper understanding, not just for her but also for the man standing in front of her. "Sometimes, it's the connections we make that help us heal," she said, feeling the vibrations of her own wisdom emerging from within. This was it, the catalyst she needed to solidify her intentions towards Max. Here was her reminder that she wasn't alone in her struggles, that healing was a shared journey. As she finished grooming Ruff, the man's tension seemed to ease. "Thanks, I really appreciate it. Do you ever feel like you're teetering on the edge, just trying to find your balance?" Sarah, feeling the heavy weight of his question, nodded. It was as if he had perceived her hidden turmoil, her own precarious state of mind balancing on a tightrope. "Every day," she admitted, surprising herself with the authenticity of her response. "But I'm beginning to understand that it's okay to lean on others, to share the load." He smiled, an expression of genuine connection crossing his face. "You're right. I think I've been afraid to ask for help for too long." In that moment, Sarah felt a whirlwind of hope coiling tightly within her, an urgency to extend this newfound insight to Max as well. They could construct a bridge, an accountability partnership where fear transformed into courage, vulnerability melded into strength. As the man and Ruff left, she felt propelled by a sense of purpose. The uncertainty of when Max would respond lingered, but now she was ready. Embracing the unknown, she would reach out, ensuring her emergence into this new chapter would happen not in isolation, but as a collaboration. With a newfound determination, she sat down to draft a heartfelt message to Max, ready to infuse it with not only her thoughts, but the wisdom offered by the stranger. And just as she began typing, the familiar ping of her phone interrupted her. Max's response had finally arrived. Would it spark the connection she envisioned, or veer into uncharted territory? Sarah's heart raced once again, a mixture of excitement and apprehension igniting within her. As Sarah hesitated for a moment, staring at her phone screen, the anxiety wrapped around her like a thick fog. Max's name illuminated the display, each second stretching into an eternity as her heart thudded in her chest. She had already crafted the perfect message in her mind, one that echoed with vulnerability and insight. But now, faced with the reality of reaching out, the weight of uncertainty threatened to crush her motivation. Taking a deep breath, she opened the message and began to read. "Hey Sarah, sorry for the delay." The words, though simple, held the weight of shared history and unresolved tension. It was the first response she had received in weeks. She felt a flicker of hope igniting within her as she continued to decipher his thoughts. "I've been thinking about what you said, that healing and connection go hand in hand. It resonates." The words felt like a lifeline thrown into the turbulent waters of their relationship, but Sarah knew that mere acknowledgement wasn't enough. She would have to dig deeper, confront the fears that tied them both in knots. Unable to resist, she started typing, her fingers flying across the screen. "I'm really glad to hear that. I think we both have a lot we could share. It's okay to need help, to lean on each other." It was a plea disguised as a statement, yet she could feel the weight of vulnerability in every keystroke. Max's response came quicker than she anticipated. "What if we meet? Maybe talk through things." That was it, the opening she had hoped for. It wasn't just about solving her internal conflict, it was about inviting him into a space where they could both be seen. Yet, almost immediately, a familiar dread began to seep back in. What if he didn't show? What if he had changed? Or worse, what if she had changed too much? Sarah put the phone down, pacing the small space of her grooming shop. It was comforting to feel the solid ground beneath her feet, yet tumultuous thoughts danced chaotically in her mind. She believed in the healing power of connection, but did she truly believe it could guide her through her own storm? The memory of the man with Ruff settled into her consciousness. "I couldn't do it alone," echoed in her ears. She realized that was precisely what had kept her stagnant, her fear of depending on someone else. Now, as she weighed the decision to meet Max, she confronted her own doubts. Was she ready to face the possibility of rejection again? After what felt like an eternity, she returned to her phone and typed out a simple response. "Yes, let's meet. When are you free?" Almost immediately, a reply popped up on her screen. "How about tomorrow at the park? Same place we used to go?" It felt surreal, the pulse of possibility thumping loudly in her chest. "Tomorrow it is," she replied, adding a nervous yet hopeful emoji. As darkness crept outside and the shop settled into a serene quiet, Sarah began to map out her preparations mentally. She envisioned different scenarios, from the comfort of laughter to the tension of silence. Regardless of the outcome, she knew this encounter would mark a critical point in her personal development journey. Pacing still, her thoughts shifted toward what she wanted from this meeting. Not just clarity on what had transpired, but a deeper understanding of herself and her needs. She was raw, exposed, yet filled with a sense of strength from her earlier interaction. The man's words reverberated through her. The connections we forge could indeed lead to healing. With newfound clarity, she collected herself, ready to embrace whatever tomorrow might bring. But as sleep beckoned, one solid thought remained nagging at the back of her mind, a fear that perhaps confronting their shared pain would unravel the very fabric of their connection. The night fell heavy around her. Did she have what it took to navigate through this revelation, or would she find herself wielding an accountability she could not handle? Tomorrow would hold answers that could change everything. The morning dawned clearer than expected, light streaming through Sarah's shop windows like a harbinger of hope. Yet within her, the storm brewed anew. What was originally excitement morphed into anxiety as the hours drifted closer to their meeting. She busied herself with tasks, prepping grooming stations and organizing supplies, but her mind refused to cooperate, returning incessantly to the looming conversation. At times, she questioned if reaching out was even the right choice. The fear of unearthing wounds felt palpable. It smothered her spirit. Every brush of a pet's fur brought back visions of her past interactions with Max, layers of laughter intertwined with tense silences. In those recollections, their connection had been vibrant yet fragile, a paradox she still struggled to understand. Sarah scrutinized herself in the mirror hanging on the wall of the grooming space. Who had she become in her journey? Evidence of her growth lay in the swirls of determination that framed her expression. She realized that every scar, every moment of doubt only added to her strength. Transformation didn't thrive in comfort, it flourished in uncertainty. This meeting could be the fulcrum of her evolution, an opportunity to embrace her emotions, even if it led to vulnerability. As the time to meet approached, she drafted a mental checklist of goals for their conversation. Clarity was essential. She craved a deeper understanding of her own emotions, as much as she sought resolution with Max. Yet, with each thought, anxiety threaded itself through her resolve. What if the confrontation sent them spiraling back into unresolved tensions? Confronting their past entanglements could just as easily rupture their tenuous hold on connection. Arriving at the park, Sarah's heart raced in a cacophony of hope and dread. The familiar surroundings, once a source of comfort, now felt laden with expectancy. She scanned the area, searching for Max's figure, battling her rising apprehensions. What would she even say? When she spotted Max, sitting slightly hunched on a bench with hands clasped together, it felt surreal. Gone was the carefree laughter of their past, replaced instead by the gravity of their circumstances. He looked older, weariness etched into the contours of his face. Yet somehow, it was comforting to know that time affected them both equally. As she approached, the first embers of doubt flickered within her again. Would he hear her? Would he even want to? When he looked up at her, those piercing eyes mirrored many of her own questions. "Hey," she greeted, finding strength in her own voice, shrugging off the weight of insecurity as she took a seat beside him. "Hey," he replied, the tension in the air palpable. There was a long pause, an almost imperceptible barrier between them. Moments like these, Sarah reflected, could either break you or forge an unbreakable bond. Could this be the moment where they exposed their truths, the root of their pain? Rubbing her hands together, Sarah fought through her nerves. "I've thought a lot about us," she began, consciously choosing her words. "About the things we've been through, how they affected us." Max nodded, an eager yet cautious response. As she opened up, speaking about her fears of intimacy along with her growth over the past months, she felt an unfamiliar sense of control wash over her. In being raw and honest, she was inviting him to share his own truths along with his vulnerabilities, albeit in a shelter of safety that she hoped they could build together. She noticed how Max's expression shifted. He was listening, genuinely engaging. And in this exchange, Sarah felt a flicker of their connection reigniting. But as their dialogue progressed, she sensed something stirring. An insecurity beginning to claw back into the conversation, hinting at an unaddressed conflict. Was there a part of him that still resented the past? The silence grew thicker again, thick with unspoken words, as Sarah mentally prepared to delve deeper. She realized that they were on the brink of something significant. If only she could steer the conversation toward the hope of healing, instead of dwelling on the dark shadows of their memories. "Max, I need to know," she said, vulnerability now etched into her tone. "What do you actually want from this?" The question hung in the air, sparking a silence so heavy it felt tangible. Suddenly, everything teetered on the edge of revelation. Had she just pushed too far, or had she unearthed the pivotal question they needed to confront? The moment felt charged, bristling with tension. Max's next words could either solidify their path forward or shatter her hopes completely. Max's gaze dropped for a moment, the weight of her question seemingly anchoring him in place. The openness within Sarah felt paradoxically liberating yet terrifying. She dared to believe that perhaps they could confront the very heart of their shared turmoil. But as silence enveloped them, her hope began to wane. They were both anchored in the past, reluctant to chart a course to the future. "Honestly, Sarah," he began, his voice low and tentative, "I don't really know what I want right now." His admission hung thick in the air, an echo of uncertainty that mirrored her own fears. "There's so much hurt between us. I feel like we're like two ships passing in the night, lost in the pain of everything we left unresolved." His words pierced her. A mixture of relief and dread flooded her. He was just as lost as she was. But how could they navigate the turbulent waters ahead? For a fleeting moment, a part of her wanted to retreat, to shield her heart from the inevitable pain of additional vulnerabilities exposed. "Can we at least try to figure out what we can take from this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe we can learn something about ourselves through this process?" Max regarded her with a careful, contemplative expression. "I've been so angry for so long, Sarah. I thought I had it all figured out. But it's like every time I try to understand what happened, I just keep circling back to frustration." Her heart pounded in rhythm with her thoughts. He was willing to be vulnerable. Was she ready to do the same? What had she built on the foundation of their past, and was it worth untangling the complexities of their shared hurt to find something meaningful? "Anger is just a part of the process," she said gently, shifting her tone from confrontation to connection. "I've learned that it can teach us, if we're willing to confront what lies underneath." A flicker of hope ignited in her chest as she noticed his eyes brighten slightly. Maybe this was the beginning of a breakthrough, a chance to tiptoe past their grudges and toward personal growth. "But how?" he asked, leaning forward with curiosity mingled with hesitation anchored in his voice. "How do we take these past shadows and turn them into something better?" "In essence," she replied, her confidence blossoming as she gathered her thoughts, "we have to be willing to forgive ourselves first. Acknowledge the pain, but not let it define who we are anymore." Sarah felt a surge of unanticipated strength as she navigated the conversation. Maximizing each word of encouragement she could muster was no easy task, yet it felt vital to her own understanding of trauma and healing. "Forgiveness?" Max echoed, clearly wrestling with the weight of that word. "That feels like a heavy ask right now." "I know, but think of it as releasing the expectations and striving for understanding. The only way to move forward in our lives and our connection is to recognize that we both made mistakes." In that moment, a significant shift seemed to occur between them. The raw honesty offered a new space, one where doubts eased into clarity. While still fraught with tension, Sarah sensed the promise of their conversation crystallizing into something deeper, a potential for healing. As they shared, unspoken truths began to emerge about their separations, about fear and longing. She realized that every word she spoke helped construct the bridge toward potential forgiveness, not just with him, but with herself. "Max, what if we made a pact? A commitment to explore our feelings without judgment," she suggested, her pulse quickening at the audacity of her idea. We can have these hard conversations, give ourselves time to grow, and redefine what this means, whatever it might look like for both of us. A heartbeat passed, then another, as Max contemplated her offer. His brow furrowed in thought, and she held her breath, understanding the magnitude of the other side to this venture. She was putting forth a possibility. Now he had to choose to embrace it or allow fear to rule them. Okay. His voice was steady, laced with an unusual firmness. I'll try. But I'm not sure how far I can go. And yet, the prospect of their uncharted path sent a tremor through Sarah. Forging this alliance could ignite transformation within them both. What if we start with something small? Max suggested, a hint of hope creeping into his tone. Like what? She asked, brightening at his openness. Maybe we begin exploring our feelings when something small bothers us instead of keeping it in. You know? Sarah let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding, buoyed by the notion of building a dialogue. It would be a leap into the unknown, but she was willing to dive headfirst into this expansive new journey. They were both taking tentative steps toward reclaiming their connection, armed with the realization that growth was possible amidst chaos. Yet as the conversation settled into a rhythm, an ominous thought whispered in the back of her mind. If they could truly unravel the depth of their emotions, could it lead to a confrontation far larger than either had anticipated? The possibility hung heavy in the air as they delved deeper into their shared narrative, teetering on the brink of unexpected revelations. Max sat across from Sarah, the air between them thick with anticipation and the unspoken threads of their pact. The vulnerability that had blossomed felt delicate, like a fragile thread that could snap under the weight of further exploration. Yet as the seconds stretched, he sensed a compelling urgency, the need to confront not just their shared past, but the veiled insecurities within themselves. What do you think holds you back the most? He asked, pushing past the surface while shattering the silence. She looked stunned for a moment, caught off guard by his bravery. Fear, mostly, Sarah eventually answered, her voice barely above a whisper. Fear of being judged, of opening myself up and not being accepted afterward. And some days I fear I'll uncover something about myself that I won't like. Max's brow furrowed, a realization dawning on him about his own barriers. I get that. I've spent years building up walls. Part of me worries that if I strip them down, what's behind them might break me. Or worse, it might ruin my image of who I think I am. The weight of that confession hung between them. The stakes were high. If this was to be the foundation of their new understanding, then both of them needed to lay bare their vulnerabilities rather than shy away from them. Maybe it's not about who we are now, but who we want to become, she suggested, her resolve seeming to grow with every moment they spent in dialogue. If we peel back the layers, maybe we can discover something new together. He nodded slowly, heartened by her courage. Then let's start by asking ourselves what we truly want. The question felt monumental. Max took a deep breath, considering the chasm between who he had been and who he wished to be. I want to feel free, not just from the past, but free to pursue my ambitions without fumbling over my fears. Sarah's eyes gleamed at his words, and he could tell she was now unearthing her own aspirations. I want to be unapologetically myself, she said, conviction strengthening her voice. To embrace my flaws and learn from them, rather than hide behind them. To let go of the mask I've worn. A flicker of admiration coursed through him. Her desire to confront herself was reflected back at him, urging him along in his own quest for authenticity. Suddenly, the past didn't seem so daunting, nor did it loom with a threatening shadow. He envisioned each moment of vulnerability as a stepping stone, each conversation a way to carve out a new path. Yet, as the conversation deepened, a recurring thought tugged at the corners of Max's mind. What if exposing these truths brings pain they hadn't anticipated? Would the unearthing of their innermost struggles ignite a spiral that would thrust them back into chaos? Can we handle that? He asked, his voice low. The rueful seriousness of the question felt like a slight chill in the warmth of their dialogue. Sarah hesitated, her expression revealing the thick layers of doubt layered with hope. Maybe we can't predict it all, but do we really have a choice? If we want healing, we must delve into the uncomfortable. And I believe we need to do this. Together. Her bravery held him grounded, and in that moment Max realized they were on the cusp of a significant transformation, not just in their relationship, but within themselves. There was power in their collective willingness to confront their demons. As the weight of their revelation settled, Max felt a surge of excitement meld with trepidation. The truth he had been afraid to face was beginning to claw its way to the surface. A strange mix of clarity and dread settled in his gut. But in that moment, as profound as it was, he found himself grappling with the deeper implications of their exploration. If they pressed on, would their newfound honesty lead to further disarray? Or could it restore the connection that had once made them inseparable? Just as he thought he could navigate the waters ahead, the door swung open, pulling from their introspection the lightest step of another reality, the arrival of someone who would irrevocably change the conversation. The tension hung like velvet as both turned to the entrance, bracing for what lay ahead. What truths remained concealed, untouched by their prior discussions? Would it reveal unity, or push them into chaos? As the figure stepped into the room, Max's mind spiraled into chaotic distraction. He had expected the conversation with Sarah to be the crucible for confronting their fears, not a stage for unforeseen interruptions. Brief amusement washed over him at the irony. The very thing they had to face, an unexpected visitor, was now urging him into deeper self-examination. The newcomer was familiar. It was Mike, an old friend from his Marine days, a connection to both the strengths he had honed and the regrets he had buried. The warmth of nostalgia battled with the chill of uncertainty as Mike strolled in, green camo jacket framing a figure that reeked of inhabited experiences that eclipsed the casualness of their current lives. "Hey, long time no see," Mike exclaimed, the casualness of his demeanor terrifying Max. He hadn't seen Mike since their last deployment, a mission forever etched in his mind. Memories swirled alongside the wafting scent of camaraderie and unspoken traumas. Max barely managed a nod, words felt stifled in his throat. Here was a man who represented an era where bravery was comfortable, where actions defined your worth, unlike the softer terrain he was now trudging with Sarah. But was this really a distraction, or a signal for growth? Mike took a seat, oblivious to the charged atmosphere. "What's up? You both look like you're in deep thought." "Just catching up," Max replied, feeling the weight of his words betray him. Everything felt superficial under Mike's casual gaze, yet he clung to the defense mechanisms that had served him well. Sarah's eyes flicked toward him, a twinge of apprehension shimmering there. Did she sense the ways in which Mike's presence disrupted their delicate exchange? "Cool." Mike grinned, but an unseen tension tugged underneath his light-hearted manner. Though they had shared countless laughs and late-night confessions before, things felt different now, weighed down by the truths they were trying to unveil. "What have you been up to?" Max asked, forcing a shift in the dialogue. Perhaps he could use this interaction to regain control, to navigate around the comfortlessness of his and Sarah's revelations. "Well, ever since I got back, I've been working with some veterans for reintegration." There was pride in Mike's voice, underscoring the journey of personal development he was taking. "It's tough, you know how it goes, but seeing them confront their issues is really inspiring. Some of them were in really dark places." Max felt a spark of envy. Mike had landed in a world where purpose seemed deeply pronounced, where the confrontation with pain led to rebuilding. With the mounting realization, Max questioned his own stagnation in a personal growth process. Was he still hiding behind walls crafted from fear? "You should join us sometime. I'm telling you, getting people to talk it out can change lives." "It changed mine," Mike continued, unaware of the inner tempest he was stirring in Max. The reality struck him. He had always believed that vulnerability was a weakness, yet here was Mike implying it was, in fact, a source of strength. "Maybe," Max murmured, vision narrowing as he contemplated the weight of that suggestion. Across the room, Sarah watched intently, her face illuminating insights he felt too conflicted to voice. He suddenly realized that he was at a crossroads, not just because of Mike's presence, but for the healing he had steadfastly avoided. Have you ever truly faced your own demons, Mike? Sarah's voice cut through the tension, compelling Max to focus. There she was, unabashedly probing. It was both terrifying and motivating. Well, yeah, I think we all have. Mike paused, the weight of acknowledgement shifting heavier on his shoulders. But it's a never-ending journey. Every time I think I've dealt with one, another pops up and kicks my ass. But that's life, right? As they shared a knowing look, Max's resolve flickered with newfound determination. There was power in the openness, the mutual acknowledgement of the messy process that both he and Sarah should navigate. Perhaps Mike's arrival wasn't simply a disruption, but an opportunity to elevate the challenges they faced. Yet even as these realizations solidified, uncertainty gripped Max's thoughts. What if revisiting old battles only opened new wounds? Are they prepared for what could emerge from this ongoing confrontation? Let's get real, Max finally blurted out, glancing between Sarah and Mike. We're talking about vulnerability, but what happens when it's too heavy? Can we all really handle the fallout? In that moment, clarity shifted like a fog unveiling a landscape. What began as a shared promise to journey forward now loomed with hesitations and apprehensions. Would they step further into the dark corners of their truths, or retreat into the safety of silence? The stakes felt perilously high as the three of them sat in that room, grappling with the profound challenge ahead. And as Max braced for the shifting tides of their evolving discourse, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of unearthing the shadows lurking within. Was he ready to finally confront the past he had run from, especially now that doors had opened in ways he couldn't predict? As the hesitant dialogue lingered in the air, Max felt the weight of uncertainty juxtaposed against the potential for growth. He was at a juncture, both terrified and curious about navigating the intricate terrain of vulnerability. Yet amid the swirling emotions, a realization began to crystallize. Their candid conversations were not just about revealing painful truths, but also about reconstructing their shared path toward healing. Maybe the fallout is what's necessary, Sarah suggested softly, her eyes earnest. Facing these hidden wounds could lead us to a place of authenticity we've never known. Max pondered her words, a silent yearning to embrace that authenticity clutching at his heart. The notion of exploration rather than avoidance began to resonate, a powerful invitation to redefine what healing could look like. For the first time, he realized that confronting their past wouldn't signify weakness. Instead, it held the potential for monumental strength. Without the foundation of vulnerability, trust remained an elusive dream. After a moment of reflective silence, Mike interjected, "What if we collectively take the first step? The three of us can be anchors for each other, find strength in camaraderie." His voice was steady, laced with conviction, as if trying to ignite the flame of courage within both Max and Sarah. "Absolutely," Sarah affirmed, her determination gaining momentum. "Support means more than just a safety net. It's about accountability too. Not just stepping forth ourselves, but pushing each other to confront fears, together." Max felt an unexpected warmth enveloping him, ignited not just by the conversation, but by the connection burgeoning between the three of them. Each of them bore their struggles, yet in this shared honesty began the formation of a formidable alliance. What had initially felt like burdens now transformed into the building blocks of a collaborative journey toward healing. "All right then," Max braved, a newfound resolve forming within him. "From here on out, I'm in. I don't want to continue pretending I have it all together when I don't. I want to let go of what has tied me down." The affirmations passed between them like an electric current, sending ripples of excitement down his spine. An awareness crept in that this moment could catalyze more than just personal growth. It could reshape their identities. As Sarah and Mike contemplated his revelation, there lay a profound understanding. Confronting trauma wouldn't erase the past, but it could recontextualize their experiences under a lens of empowerment. They had chosen to step into the chaos instead of retreating, to fight their inner battles openly rather than stay cloistered in solitude. "Let's plan a time each week to meet," Mike proposed, enthusiasm lining his words. "We can share perspectives, build out thoughts and feelings, and take turns holding each other accountable." "Yes," Sarah agreed, her voice steady with purpose. We commit to sharing our progress as much as our setbacks, reminding each other of this journey, even on days when it's unclear. Max was unexpectedly overcome with a sense of weightlessness, the burdens he had been carrying for so long feeling lighter in that moment. Hope blossomed as they began sketching potential meetings and conversations, creating a roadmap rooted in mutual support. As plans took shape and optimism filled the gaps left by uncertainty, Max embraced the reality of change. He felt a sense of camaraderie unfurl as they shared both laughter and reflections, firmly entrenched in the promise they had made to each other. As the hours passed and their conversation flowed organically from intentions to commitments, Max found himself sharing snippets of his past, stories that had long since felt tethered in shadows. Something shifted. The anxiety that had smothered him for so long began to unfurl, replaced by a surge of confidence as he acknowledged vulnerability as inherent strength. By the time they parted ways, a sense of accomplishment washed over him, a profound acknowledgement of accomplishment and courage thrumming through his veins. Together with Sarah and Mike, Max had taken substantial steps towards confronting who he was becoming. The next few days passed swiftly, marked by a tinge of excitement and anticipation. For the first time, Max felt empowered to face the unrelenting grip of anxiety and uncertainty threaded through his days. Each interaction, whether mundane or monumental, served as a piece of a larger puzzle he could finally start to understand. Every challenge he encountered became an opportunity to connect with himself, and slowly but surely, the shadows began to fade. Instead of retreating, he explored thoughts and feelings that had once paralyzed him. As weeks led into practice sessions within their newfound accountability structure, Max witnessed an evolution. He began to inhabit his own narrative. In the midst of this awakening, he realized that the act of sharing his journey with Sarah and Mike had forged pathways he never expected. It deepened their connections and allowed him to find clarity. They were partners in this distinctive expedition, embarking toward personal success powered by collective healing. Flash forward to several months later, and Max stood proudly at a local veterans resource event he helped organize. The tent was filled with chatter, laughter, and shared experience, as fellow veterans and their families came together in solidarity to confront pain with hope. Among them was Sarah, engaging with others, her kindness evident in every interaction. That day, they breathed life into the essence of empowerment, not just for themselves, but also for the lives they touched. Max smiled, overwhelmed with a sense of fulfillment that felt entirely justified. Conversations bloomed, battles were shared, and victories celebrated. I'm enough, I'm seen, I'm finally traversing this once insurmountable path. The path had transformed, once filled with uncertainty, now mapped by confidence. Max embodied a confidence and sense of self he hadn't known in much too long. He reveled in their strength, the camaraderie anchoring him as he navigated experiments of clarity, of forgiveness, things once bound tightly, now free. At that moment, under the rays of a brimming sun, Max understood he had conquered what seemed impossible. He had taken the reins of his own story, woven it into the fabric of friendship, growth, acceptance, a life no longer dictated by his past. And in a brilliant alignment of lives, he knew it would keep getting better. The three of them, Sarah, Mike, and himself, stood as architects of mutual support, thriving not just in isolation, but in dynamic partnership. They were, at long last, doing more than surviving. They were truly living. Now it's your turn to embrace your journey, confront your shadows, and transform your struggles into strength. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for stories of personal transformation. Comment your reactions and theories about this stunning conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this powerful message. You need to support the channel today. This is the moment. Don't wait even one more second.